fragen wir mal auch noch über die Familie Knight sie aus. Ich denke, da kannst du auch viel darüber sagen.
Tell me about our family.
Who would you like to hear about? Your granddad, your father, or your mother?
Fangen wir mal mit Harrison Knight an.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Your granddad immigrated to America when he was 21. He worked his way through school, met and married me, and we had your father, Philip.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Your granddad supported me and your father with bookkeeping. I'll tell you what, though, he hated every minute of it. Didn't really like bookkeeping one bit. Maybe that was why he had the worst luck with jobs. The nights he'd come home afraid to tell me he'd lost another. And I would tell him it didn't matter to me. But he felt ashamed, Gabriel.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Harrison was only 36 when he died. Your father was 8 years old at the time. Your granddad was hit by a streetcar in the business district. Took me nearly a year to believe he was really gone.
I'm sorry, Gran.
I know you are, dear.
Das war doch ziemlich jung.
Tell me something about Granddad.
Did you know that your granddad was a poet? He was! He wrote the most beautiful poetry for me when we were courting. I always thought he should have done something with that gift. But he was such a practical man. Didn't believe in chasing after dreams.
Tell me something about Granddad.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Okay, dann fragen wir sie über seinen Vater aus.
Tell me about my father.
Your father was my only child. How we adored him. Philip suffered from terrible nightmares, just like your granddad did. They were 2 peas in a pod.
Genau, wie Gabriel anscheinend. Der schläft hier auch nicht besonders gut.
Tell me about my father.
When Philip met your mother, it was love at first sight. They were married 2 weeks later. Never looked at a girl seriously until then. And he looked at plenty. You have your father's way with women, Gabriel. And your granddad's.
Tell me about my father.
I wanted to just lay down and die when he and your mother were killed in that car crash when you were only 8. It was the thought of taking care of you that kept me going, Gabriel. The police say your father swerved off the road after being frightened by something. Perhaps a deer in the road or a wild cat.
Ja, eine ziemliche tragische Familiengeschichte von Gabriel.
Tell me about my father.
Your granddad wanted Philip to have a normal life. He was obsessed by that thought. He pushed Philip to go to law school. Philip was driven to art. He painted almost in a daze. He would get so inside himself when he worked.
Tell me about my father.
He always hated it that it was Margaret's money that supported the 3 of you when his painting couldn't. I kept telling him, try something more cheerful, like a landscape or 2. But he couldn't do it. His work was just too dark and disturbing for the public, you know.
Also ich kenne da einige Leute, die solche Bilder gerne hätten.
Tell me about my father.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Okay, dann haben wir noch eins, und zwar über seine Mutter.
Tell me about my mother.
Your mother was Margaret Templeton when your father met her. She came from a very wealthy Creole family in New Orleans. She was beautiful and reckless. She was madly in love with your father, of course, but I also think she liked defying her family. Since you're so interested in family history these days, Why don't you go by St. Louis Cemetery number 1 and visit the family tomb? It would be a sweet gesture.
Maybe I will.
Ich denke, das werden wir wohl auch machen.
Tell me about my mother.
Your mother's family refused to give her money after the marriage. All she had left was a modest trust fund from a great aunt, who happened to like a fella. The remainder of your mother's trust fund became yours when she died. That's what you used to open your bookshop.
Tell me about my mother.
The Templetons are all gone now. Every last one of them. They never wanted anything to do with us, of course. What a waste.
Ja, sowas ist immer schade.
Tell me about my mother.
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Okay, dann fragen wir mal über New Orleans.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
New Orleans is very southern. Of course, though, not as much as it used to be when I was a girl. It's gotten much more influenced by the East Coast and that California stuff. Still, it hasn't changed as much as other places, I reckon. We've always been happy here.
Wo sind wir? Hier.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
My goodness, boy. You've lived here all your life just like me. I can't tell you much that you don't already know.
Okay, was haben wir sonst noch? Frag mal über Voodoo. Aber ich glaube nicht, dass sie davon viel sagen kann.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Voodoo? What an odd question, Gabriel. Of course, you always were interested in monster movies and all that other weird stuff. You get that from your father and granddad. I don't know anything about it, dear. Of course, it was very big in New Orleans at one time, but you don't hear about it so much these days. Too much else in the world to worry about, I guess.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
I don't know what else to tell you, dear.
Okay, zumindest haben wir erfahren, dass seine Familie sich schon viel damit beschäftigt hat. Fahren wir noch nach dem.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
St. John's Eve? I remember when I was a girl, we always had a St. John's Eve Mass. The Mass was said at midnight, and we held candles. One time on the way home, we were waylaid by a large group of drunken revelers. They didn't hurt us, but I was frightened. My father was furious. We never went to St. John's Eve Mass after that.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I haven't celebrated it in years, Gabriel. I'm sure there's still Mass in the more traditional churches, but I don't go.
Schauen wir mal, ob es noch was gibt, aber ich bezweifle es.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I haven't celebrated it in years, Gabriel.
Yep, ich dachte mir doch. Dann haben wir noch den Voodoo-Morde.
What do you know about the Voodoo-Murders?
Oh, Gabriel, nothing. And I don't want to. I sometimes wonder what this world is coming to.
What do you know about...
Oh, Gabriel.
Ja, das dachte ich mir. Da gibt es auch nichts mehr. Jetzt haben wir noch ein Gespräch, und zwar Capri sans corps.
Do you have any idea what Capri sans corps means?
Something without something, I think. My French is so rusty. I swear my mind is going.
It's okay, thanks.
Etwas ohne etwas.
Do you have any...
Something...
It's okay.
Okay, ich glaube, das war's. Schauen wir uns noch kurz um.
On the wall are portraits of Gran and Gramps when they were young. Gabriel's inherited some good-looking genes.
That's my gran. Adorable, as always.
You're such a tease.
The sofa has a wan blue chintz pattern that Gabriel remembers fondly.
Dann haben wir hier noch den Nähkorb.
Granny's knitting. She whips through that stuff like there was no tomorrow. Grandmother Knight rarely uses the fireplace these days. Too much of a hassle to clean. Mostly pictures of Gabriel, his dad, and Harrison Knight. The magazines in the bin includes issues of Southern Living, Ladies' Home Journal, and Macars. Gabriel grew up in this room. Just being here make him feel safe. And after about 5 minutes, claustrophobic. That clock has been in the Wright family, Granny's family, for centuries.
So, dann könnte man ja hochgehen, um nach diesen Sachen von seinem Vater zu schauen. Aber ich mache erstmal eine kurze Aufnahmepause. Als allererstes aber speichern wir nochmal. Nehmen wir die Nummer 4. So, und dann mache ich wie gesagt schon eine kleine Aufnahmepause. Wir sehen uns dann in der nächsten. Macht's bis dahin gut und ja, ciao, ciao. Hallo, ich melde mich nach einem kurzen Intermezzo von Star Wars The Old Republic wieder zurück zu Gabriel Knight 1. Wir sind jetzt immer noch bei Gabriels Großmutter und wenn ich mich recht erinnere, wollten wir auf den Speicher gehen, um die Sachen von Gabriels Vater uns anzuschauen. Und ich würde sagen, das machen wir doch gleich einmal.
Be careful of the dust.
Ich glaube, Staub wird uns nicht umbringen. So. Hier sind wir.
These old picture frames have been up here for years.
Kommt mir das also so vor, oder ist die Sprachausgabe? Steht aber alles eigentlich richtig drin. Kam mir nur ein bisschen leise vor gerade, die ganze Sprache, aber na gut.
There's a sketchbook on the chair that Gabriel remembers as his father's.
Dann schauen wir uns doch mal, versuchen wir das mal zu lesen oder uns anzuschauen.
I think I'll take Daddy's sketchbook with me.
Gut, und dann schauen wir uns das doch gleich mal an. Das hier, oder?
Gabriel looks fondly at his father's sketchbook and charcoal pencil.
Ja, das hier schätze ich mal. Ja.
Images haunt the pages of Philip Knight's sketchbook, the way they must have haunted his mind. The images touch a deep chord in Gabriel. So familiar are they that he finds it hard to believe they aren't from his own subconscious.
Ich muss kurz nochmal, glaube ich, eine Aufnahmepause machen. Ganz kurz, ich muss mal nachschauen, ob diese, ob der Ton wirklich so leise kommt. Ich muss mal kurz deswegen mal nachschauen. Einen kleinen Moment bitte. So, hier bin ich wieder. Und, es gab tatsächlich ein kleines Problem. Ja, aber ich denke, ich habe es jetzt eingestellt, dass es jetzt wieder laufen sollte. Ich hoffe auch, dass die Aufnahme richtig steht, weil anscheinend macht Fraps ja auch gerade ein paar Probleme. Aber ich hoffe, es klappt jetzt einfach mal.
Images haunt the pages of Philip Knight's sketchbook, the way they must have haunted his mind. The images touch a deep chord in Gabriel. So familiar are they that he finds it hard to believe they aren't from his own subconscious.
Ja, anscheinend hat Gabriel und allgemein die Familie Knight ein kleines Problem, dass sie dieselben Albträume und so Zeug hat. Gibt's hier auf der anderen Seite auch noch einen neuen Text?
Images haunt the pages of Philip Knight's sketchbook, the way they must have haunted his mind. The images touch a deep chord in...
Ich hab's mal abgebrochen, aber es gab anscheinend nichts Neues. Gut. Was haben wir dann sonst noch alles hier? Auf dem Sessel liegt noch was.
That box of knickknacks has been up there for at least 5 years.
Okay, dann schauen wir mal rein. Wahrscheinlich öffnen, oder?
There is nothing to open or close there.
Nein. Dann vielleicht einfach zum Nehmen.
There's nothing I want in there.
Okay, hier gab es auf jeden Fall nichts Interessantes.